Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning. Good morning, Max. Good to see you watching. Let's give everyone a little bit of time to join before we start. How are you, Max? How's everything going? How is everyone this morning? It's been a very quiet morning for me. Oh, coming. Just give me 1 second. Go and check who's at the door. Hello. Hey. Oh, amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you. Hold on 1 second. I can't. My mum. Just 1 second. Sorry. Do you know? Oh yeah, they're here. Just 1 sec. Sorry, I just wasn't sure where she left them. Thank you so much. Amazing. Have a good day. Thank you so much. Oh, sorry. That was my vegetable delivery. Okay, who have we got this morning? We're just waiting. It's okay if not a lot of people join. I don't know where everybody is. Might have to stop this story time if no one's really coming. But I will be starting very soon. Good morning, Frankie, if you're watching. Good morning, Noemi. Oh, I'd be really sad to have to stop it. But if no one's really watching, it kind of feels like, I wouldn't say a waste of time, but we'll see. We'll see how tomorrow goes, and then I'll decide if I carry on. Right, let's give them 1 more minute to join us, and then we will begin. Because actually the book is getting so good. It's getting so good. I'm really enjoying it. Right, let me get us a poem for today. Let's read Duck's Ditty by Kenneth Grahame. All along the backwater, through the rushes tall, ducks are a-dabbling, up tails all. Ducks' tails, rakes' tails, yellow feet a-quiver, yellow bills all out of sight, busy in the river. Slushy green undergrowth where the roach swims, here we keep our larder cool and full of dim. Everyone for what he likes, we like to be, heads down, tails up, dabbling free. High in the blue above, swift swirls and call, we are down a-dabbling up, tails all. And that's by Kenneth Grahame. Duck's Ditty. So what are you saying, Naomi, that people are watching it afterwards? But are they still watching it? Well, to be fair, if I look at my views, I can look at them now. It does say that by the end of the day, I have about 70 people have watched it. So I guess, yeah, people are watching it afterwards. Let's have a look. Yeah, so yesterday's video has not as many views, but it does have, more views. Okay. We'll carry on. I'll definitely carry on with my the Key Stage 2 reading. I might just not do the Key Stage 1 anymore. Thanks for letting me know, Naomi. You're a superstar. Right, should we start our chapter for today? I'm excited. So where were we? We're on chapter 9 now. Let me see how long chapter 9 is. Okay, super. 10 pages. That's a good length. The Shapeshifter. The next morning, I woke up clutching my locket and feeling so happy that, at first, I couldn't remember where I was again. But after a few seconds, my brain woke up and made me sit up so fast, I banged my head on the roof of the bunk bed. Today was Saturday. It was Halloween, and the day the Star Hunters' top secret midnight mission was going to happen. By this time tomorrow, the Royal Star Hunters would know Mum's real name, close the competition, and tell the world that her star was really called, what her star was really called. Even Dad might hear about it and know what me and Noah had done and come and find us too. Jumping out of bed, I ran over to the window. The sun was up, but I could tell that it was still really early because the grass was covered by a white mist that moved like ghosts going for a walk. I didn't know how long I would have to wait in the bathroom until Mrs. I came to get us, because this was our first Saturday in her house. At home, Mum always woke us up half an hour later on weekend days, so maybe it was the same here. But I was too excited to go back to sleep, so I got my star map from the front pocket of my rucksack and the newspaper and the souvenir guide out from under the bunk bed and went to sit by the window. Even though I had read all about Mum being a rock star to Noah before Mrs. I had come to turn off the lights last night, I wanted to read it again all by myself. So that's what I did. Yes, the plan is going to be in full swing. 3 whole times I wanted to remember every single sentence, like the one that said Mum had stumped the greatest astronomers in the world and broken the very foundation of physics, and the other one that said she was making history with every passing second. But the best thing about the paper wasn't the words. It was being able to touch the picture and know that it was real. When Mum had made us run away to hide in the hotel that wasn't really a hotel, she'd forgotten to pack any of our photographs from home. She only had one photograph of me and Noah and her together, and it had been inside her purse. But I didn't know where that was anymore, or if I would ever see it again. So the newspaper was the only photo I had of Mum now. The rocket ship inside me came alive when I touched it, and I promised myself that I would keep the picture safe until I could grow up and put it in a frame for all of time. It's made me wonder if the Royal Star Hunters would let me see Mum as a star in the sky through their extra powerful telescope too, right up close. I told my brain to remember to ask because I was sure they would. After I looked just as hard as I could at Mum's star so that my brain couldn't ever forget what it looked like, I folded the paper up and, putting it next to me, opened up the souvenir guide. I had learned as much as I could about the observatory so that when the Royal Star Hunters met me, they would know that it was okay to let me use the telescope to see Mum and that I wouldn't break it. But the guide was much harder to read than I thought it would be. It wasn't like any of the souvenir guides we got at Disneyland or at the zoo. It was more like a science textbook from school and had lots of words in it that I'd never seen before, like octant and altisimos and zenith, which all sounded like weapons or weapons that superheroes might use to beat up their enemies. I flipped through the pages until I came to a black and white picture of lots of women waving. The writing next to it said that the Royal Star Hunters didn't just use their compasses to measure the stars, but human computers too. I had never heard of human computers before, and it made me think that Travis could be our one, because he seemed to like numbers and did maths on his fingers all the time. But then the next line said that all the royal human computers were always women, so I guess I would have to be it instead, even though I still got my 7 and my 8 times tables mixed up. I can relate. I get mine mixed up too. Good morning, Leon. Closing the guide, I opened up my star map, and I had to tell Mum to stop near one of the constellations that were close to me and Noah. Crossing my fingers and closing my eyes tight, I told Mum that just as loud as I could inside my head that she had land somewhere outside Mrs. I's second floor window, that the one at the back of the house, not the front. Then I told all the stars to please help her to know where to stop too. I didn't know if the stars could speak or if they used a special sign language made up of flashes and winks, but I was sure they could understand English. Dad always said that everyone in the whole galaxy knew some English. Rise and shine, cried out Mrs. I. As the bedroom door swung open, I quickly jumped up and hid everything behind my back. I'd been too busy shouting at the stars inside my head to hear anything outside. Ah, you're up, Anaya. Good girl, smiled Mrs. I, as she began to sniff the air. She had silver glitter on her eyes today to match her grey dress and had big grey feathery earrings in her ears. I thought she looked like a grey parrot I had seen at the London Zoo once, only nicer. Go and get cleaned up, please, she said, while I see if Noah has left me a present, eh? I nodded as Noah sat up in the bed, rubbing his eyes. That was it. Time to start the top secret midnight mission. After brushing my teeth super fast, I quickly got dressed and waited for Mrs. I to take Noah for a shower, just like she always did after she had cleaned the bed. But instead of going downstairs to wait for breakfast like usual, I crept up to Travis's door and did the super secret knock he had taught me last night, which was 2 slow knocks followed by 3 quick ones. Ben opened the door and pulled me in. Ready, he asked, looking excited. He was wearing a football t-shirt with his name on it and black shorts and bright red knee-high socks. And Travis looked like he was wearing some extra shiny white pajamas, except they were much cooler because they weren't pajamas at all, but a karate suit. I nodded as Travis turned his computer on. But I can't make bird noises, I told them. I tried all last night, and all I could do was cuckoo noises or a pigeon. A pigeon? Asked Ben, frowning. I nodded and gave a coo, coo to show him. That just sounds like a cuckoo, said Ben, only slower. It's not, it's different. But that's why a cat noise is better, I explained, and made a meow sound. See? Okay, shrugged Ben. We'll do cat noises then. It's long, said Travis, shaking his head and scrolling down the computer screen. He'd opened up the bike map we had looked at yesterday and was reading the instruction. It's 7 pages, he said, as he read the last sentence that said, your destination, Royal Observatory, Greenwich. We all stared at the screen nervously. Suddenly, I heard a creak outside the door and turned around. Ben and Travis heard it too, but the door stayed closed and everything became silent again. So we turned back around the computer screen. So, Anaya, you do the cat signal for me as soon as Ben's turned on the printer, yeah? Said Travis, and then pretend you're doing something, but not really, he instructed. Shh, said Ben suddenly, striking out his hand and staying extra still. We all fell quiet and listened extra hard. There was lots of thumping on the stairs, and after a few seconds we could hear the radio being switched on and Mrs. I getting things out from the fridge and Noah banging on the kitchen table. Morning, Finley. Well done for your super history this morning, and well done for logging on. They're just about to do their plan. I think Leon's very happy to see you. Come on, said Travis as he grabbed his computer mouse and hovered the arrow over the picture of the printer. She's in the kitchen already. I nodded, even though my insides were all jumping up and down like extra bouncy frogs. Come on then, said Ben, touching his hair on the sides like he was getting ready to go to a fashion show, and not downstairs to secretly turn on Mrs. I's printer. I followed Ben out of Travis's room and copied him as he tiptoed along the corridor and down the creaking stairs. Coming to a stop at the edge of the kitchen door, he looked over his shoulder at me and, putting a finger to his lips, peeked around the corner. I was worried Mrs. I would see his hair before he could see anything at all. But then, like a ballet dancer dressed in football shorts, he leaped past the kitchen door and landed on the other side. Hearing the sink turn on, I gulped and leaped too, but landed on Ben's toes. Ouch! Whispered Ben, rubbing them with his hands. Sorry, I whispered back. Rolling his eyes, Ben waved me on, and using his sock to slide up the wooden floor of the corridor, stopped outside Mrs. I's office door. Grabbing the doorknob, Ben twisted it until it clicked open. Thank God Mrs. I never locks it, he whispered. I'm going in. Wait for a meow from me, he added before disappearing through the gap in the doorway like a shadow and closing it shut behind him. Anaya! Cried out Mrs. I from the kitchen, making me jump. Ben, Travis, Sophie, breakfast now, please. From inside the office, I heard a meow, meow, and then sprang into action, running past the kitchen door so quickly that I knew Mrs. I wouldn't be able to see me. I skidded to the bottom of the stairs and gave a loud meow, meow, hoping Travis could hear me above the radio music, but that Mrs. I and Sophie couldn't hear me at all. Then I tiptoed back past the kitchen. Luckily, Mrs. I was too busy banging on the toaster to see me. I waited as still as a metal statue in a park for something to go wrong, but the radio music radio music kept on playing, and I could hear Mrs. I telling Noah to sit down properly. There was no noise on the staircase, which meant it was still empty, and Sophie was still upstairs. Pressing my ears to the office door, I held my breath and crossed my fingers and concentrated hard. Please let the map print. Please let the map print out. After a few seconds, I heard a machine coming to life, and then Ben calling out, meow! It was working. The printer was working. Now all I had to do was go into the kitchen and keep Mrs. I busy until Ben and Travis had finished, just like we had planned. I stood up straight and turned around, ready to turn into the kitchen, but instead I found myself bumping into a wall of silver sequins. My eyes travelled up and reached Sophie's. She was standing in front of me with a smile on her face and her arms crossed, as if she'd been watching me the whole time. I instantly felt I felt something heavy had fallen off a shelf inside my stomach and landed next to my feet. What do we have here then? She asked, looking over my shoulder, as if she had X-ray vision and could see through the door. Stealing something, are we? I shook my head and opened my mouth, hoping it would give us a warning meow to Ben, but my voice had turned chicken and was hiding somewhere behind my tonsils, and nothing came out at all. Ah, Sophie! So I waited for Sophie to do something. Maybe she was going to push past me and catch Ben and take our map from the printer and ruin everything. Or maybe she was going to call Mrs. I and tell her I was a thief and the police needed to come right away. But Sophie didn't do any of these things. Instead, she smiled and said, "Don't worry, I won't tell," and gave me a wink. It was the first wink Sophie had ever given me, and it made me smile back and feel worried at the same time. "Thank you," I said, even though the voice that said it didn't sound like mine at all. Sophie gave a nod, but then, in the very next moment, her smile disappeared, and her lips and eyes became as thin as each other. Then suddenly she said, "Not unless I really want to," and turning around, she ran off into the kitchen, shouting, "Mom, Anaya's trying to steal from your office. I've just seen her." From behind the office door, I could hear a sudden thump, and from the floorboards upstairs, I could hear running feet, and from inside my ears, I could hear something beating like a drum, and I knew right away that they were all the sounds of the top secret mission that had gone terribly wrong. Oh no, Sophie! She's so annoying. That's the end of that chapter, but I can read a few more pages. The Lost Day, number 10. When I saw both Mrs. I and Sophie hurrying out the kitchen, I knew right away what I had to do. I had to make a distraction. I used to make them all the time at home when I wanted to help keep Dad away from Mum and Noah, but I didn't know what kind of distraction would work with Mrs. I, so I had to guess. I wished I could pretend cry, but I couldn't. Instead, I stood up straight and waited, listening as Noah jumped down from the kitchen table to have a look at Travis. And Travis hurried down the stairs. "Anaya, what's going on here?" said Mrs. I. She came and stood in front of me with her eyebrows raised. She didn't look as angry as she had done when the bowl of spaghetti had smashed onto the floor. She just looked confused. Forcing my mouth to open, I began my distraction. "Please, Mrs. I, it was all my fault," I said as loudly as I could, so that Ben could hear me and make the printer finish faster. I hadn't heard him meow again, so the map had to still be printing. "It was my idea. I made a dare to see what was behind the door, and Ben said I should just ask you. But then I dared him to go in first, and he said okay, and then he did, and that's all. We weren't stealing anything, I promise." Mrs. I's frown changed from being one line to being 3 squiggly lines. Sophie shook her head. "No, Mum, she's lying." I watched as she opened her mouth again, but before she could say anything else, I opened mine first. I had to keep my distraction going for as long as I could, even if I didn't know what I was going to say. "It's true," I shouted, feeling my cheeks and the end of my nose becoming hot. "We weren't stealing anything, I promise. I made the dare, and Travis said I shouldn't, but I did anyway. It's my fault, and you can punish me if you like." My voice became quieter until it vanished into silence. It's true, Mrs. I, said Travis, his eyes almost popping out of his head. Mrs. I nodded and, telling me to stand aside, reached for the doorknob. A large, bubbling stingray began to rise at the back of my throat. I knew Mrs. I was going to find the printer printing and Ben meowing and the top secret mission everywhere, which meant Noah and me were going to be taken away by the police, and I was definitely going to be sick all over the floor. The door swung open and Mrs. I stepped inside. As me and Sophie and Noah Travis all pushed in behind, my eyes felt as if they were full of heartbeats as I blinked hard inside the much darker room. After 2 seconds, I saw blinds at a large window and Ben sitting in Mrs. I's office chair, spinning around on it as if he was trying to make himself dizzy. As soon as he saw us, he jumped up as if he was surprised. "Sorry, Mrs. I," he said, trying to stand up straight. Mrs. I said, and walked in, looking around. I saw Travis glance over at a large black printer that sat on top of a tall block of metal drawers. I looked at it too, but it was switched off and there wasn't any papers on its little shelf. "Right," said Mrs. I, walking over to the metal drawers and pulling them out to make sure they were locked. "Well, nothing's out of place here. Everyone out. Breakfast is getting cold and we're running late already. And Anaya," I stopped and waited for Mrs. I to start shouting at me, but instead she said, "Next time you want to see anything, all you have to do is ask, darling. I'm not hiding anything, and this is your house too, okay?" I nodded, even though I didn't believe her. People who didn't have anything to hide didn't have locked drawers, and Mrs. I had 3 of them. "But Mum, they're lying," cried Sophie, looking over at Ben suspiciously. I heard them say they were going to steal something for a dare." "Ben, have you stolen anything from this room?" asked Mrs. I. Ben shook his head and showed everyone his hands. "Anaya, is there anything you want to take or borrow from this room?" I shook my head too. "Well, there we are, Sophie. You must have heard wrong. Come on, time for breakfast." Mrs. I put her hand on Noah's shoulder and, taking the spoon he had been sucking out of his mouth, led him back to the kitchen. I waited for Sophie to leave too, but she didn't move at all. She stayed exactly where she was and glared at all of us. It was a glare so strong that it made my breath stop. It was like she was trying to hypnotize everyone with her eyes, just like the snake with the swirling eyes in the Jungle Book cartoon Mum had let us watch one time, except that the snake was silly and funny and Sophie was neither of those things. We all waited for her to say something, and I could see Travis and Ben were holding their breath too. After a few seconds, Sophie pointed a finger at us. I didn't know exactly what you're up to, she said. Her whisper sounded like a hiss. "But I'm going to find out. And then you'll see." And swiveling around on her heels, she left the room. "Whizzing womble," said Ben, breaking out into a grin and making me and Travis breathe again. "Good thing Mrs. I didn't come over and check my pants." And jumping up, Ben lifted his football shirt. There, pressed against his back and half tucked into his shorts, were the pages of our map. "Yes. Good one," said Travis, giving Ben a high five and smiling so much that all his braces stuck out. "That's brilliant," I said, smiling too. I held up both my hands and gave Ben a high 10, just like me and Eddie and Kwan used to do at school. "Yep, I'm a genius," nodded Ben. "Maybe that's why my hair is as big as Einstein's. I'll go hide the map in my room after breakfast." "Hey, good job stalling, Anaya," he said, giving me a punch on the arm. "He gave me enough time to get the map into my pants and turn the printer off. You were brilliant." "Yeah," said Travis, giving me a punch on the arm too. Only his was a more of a tap. "Come on, who's hungry?" asked Ben. I could eat about 15 pieces of toast right now. Special agent jobs always make me hungry. And giving us a grin, he half ran and half slid all the way to the kitchen. After breakfast, I thought Mrs. I would let everyone go up to their rooms again or play or watch TV together, because that's what Mum let us do at home at the weekends most times. But instead, Mrs. I made us all hurry into the car so that Sophie could go to her drama school and pretend she was an actress, and Ben could go to play football so badly he kept getting booed at by his own teammates, and Travis could do karate in a hall with 100 other karate kids and be shouted at by a very red-faced teacher with bright metal clips in her hair. Then after that, it was orchestra rehearsal, where Sophie played the violin and Ben played the cello. Ben played the cello and Travis sat and stuffed pieces of paper into his ears. When all the activities were over and we had eaten some sandwiches in the car, we had to go shopping because Mrs. I needed to get Halloween sweets and bits for everyone's trick-or-treating costumes. That was when Noah made the first part of our plan work without us having to do anything, because as soon as Mrs. I went to buy Sophie's witch's hat, he started crying and screaming that he wanted a costume too. He cried so much that in the end, Mrs. I said we could both go trick-or-treating with Travis and Ben, just so long as we never left them. Ben and Travis gave me a thumbs up and a wink each, as if I had made Noah cry on purpose. I didn't know how to tell them that I hadn't made Noah do anything at all. So I just gave them a thumbs up back and helped Mrs. I pick out our costumes. By the time we finished and finally got home, The kitchen clock said it was past 4 o'clock. As soon as I saw the time, something small and squiggly began to wriggle around in my stomach. We had less than half an hour and then less than an hour and a half until we had to leave. And all we had was the bike map and our costumes. We still had loads left to do, but even after we got home, Mrs. I still kept us busy. First, Ben and Travis had to go and shower because they smelled like socks, and me and Noah had to help put away the shopping. Then we all had to help put dinner on because Mrs. I said nobody was going to be eating bags of sugar on an empty stomach on her watch. As we all helped in the kitchen, I could feel time beginning to slip away faster and faster. Travis and Ben still needed to ask Mrs. I if we could borrow the bikes from the bike shed, and we still needed to get all the runaway snacks Ben had secretly made Mrs. I buy, and get the torches. How were we going to leave in time? By the time Ben and Travis had finished their showers and dinner was ready, I was starting to feel as the entire ocean was moving around inside me. What if Father Time was still angry with me and was making us lose the day on purpose? What if the plan didn't work and Mum's star got stuck with someone else's name? What if I couldn't ever make things right? I could hear the ticks and tocks of the kitchen clock getting louder and louder, as if it was trying to warn me that time was running away. Finally, just as I was starting to think that it wasn't really Halloween at all and we weren't ever going to be allowed out, Mrs. I clapped her hands and said, "Oh, you better get your costumes on. I can hear them coming already." A second later, the doorbell rang as some voices called out, "Trick or treat!" Feeling the blood begin to rush around inside me like a river, I couldn't control. I stood up. Noah is crucial to the plan, you're right. Mrs. I frowned at me for a second before smiling. No need, Anaya. You finish dinner. I'll take care of them. Candace and Roberta are coming to get me at 7, Mum, said Sophie, as Mrs. I jumped up from her chair and quickly grabbed a large bowl of sweets from the kitchen counter, ran out into the corridor. "I'm not going anywhere with you losers," added Sophie, giving us a "I hate all of you" stare as she left the room too. I sneaked a look at the clock while Mrs. I was out of the room. It was exactly 6:25 p.m. It was so late and we weren't even ready yet. "Anaya," whispered Ben as soon as we were all alone, "you have to say you want to come to Dan's, okay?" I nodded as Travis gave me a thumbs up, while Noah licked his plate and nodded. "And we have to get Mrs. I out of the kitchen somehow so I can get our snack food," said Ben, looking out over at all the kitchen cupboards that were holding the treats hostage. "We'll think of something upstairs," said Travis. "Mrs. I, can we take our bikes and borrow Sophie's for Anaya?" asked Ben, as soon as Mrs. I come back. The bowl of sweets in her hand was half empty, which made me think of Mum. She always gave everyone too many sweets on Halloween too. "Why do you want the bike safe?" frowned Mrs. I. "I don't want you going too far tonight. Not when it's your first time looking after Anaya and Noah." "But Dan said we could go over to his house to do swapsies, everyone. He's only 3 minutes ride away," he said. He said Anaya and Noah can come too. "Please." Mrs. I rolled her eyes and looked at me and Noah as if wondering what to do. "Anaya, Noah, would you like to go?" I nodded and said, "Yes, please." Yeah, I want to go on the bike," said Noah. "See," said Ben, starting to talk more quickly, "because if they come, we've got more sweets to swap, and Anaya can make friends with Dan too." I looked at Mrs. I and nodded and made my eyes as big as they could go to. "Please, please, please, Mrs. I, please let us have our bikes," I whispered inside my head and with my eyes. Said Mrs. I, shaking her head at herself. "Okay, you can go to Dan's, but you can walk there. The bikes are too big for Noah to sit on, and I don't want any accidents. But I'll let you stay until 8:30, so you have time to walk there and back again without rushing, okay?" Ben and Travis nodded as me and Noah watched to see if they were going to try again, but they didn't. Instead, Ben jumped up and, flinging his arms around Mrs. I's waist, gave her a big hug. "Thanks, Mrs. I, you're the best," he said, making Mrs. I shake her head again. I watched as she laughed and then hugged him back, and missed my mum even more than I ever thought I could. "Off you go," she said, giving us all a smile as she pulled Ben away from her. "Go get ready before it's too late." Nodding, Ben and me and Travis and Noah left the kitchen table to go and put our costumes on. As I reached the kitchen door, I looked up at the clock and saw the large hand click into place over the number 6. It was 6:30 already, but I forced myself to believe that it didn't matter. Time might have made us lose the whole day, and Mrs. I might have made us lose our bikes, and we might have half an hour later than we had planned, but nothing was going to stop me from getting to the Star Hunters and making them name Mum's star right, even if it meant making everyone else, even Noah, stay behind. And that is Chapter 11. Chapter 11 is called The Tiger, the Wardrobe, and the Witch. Interesting. Okay, guys, I hope you enjoyed story time. Thank you for watching. If you're watching later, hello, and I hope you're having a super day. I will see you tomorrow at 11 o'clock for the next couple of chapters. Have a super rest of the day and try and enjoy the sunshine before it starts raining. Enjoy your lunch and remember, stay home, stay safe, stay positive, and as always, stay kind. See you tomorrow, superstars. You're welcome. Bye, everybody.